In class so far, we introduced this idea of periodizations in history. And last year, you studied ancient history and classical history. And now we are zooming in on this period that we call post classical from 1200 CE to 1450 CE. So about 800 and 700 years ago. And the unit is going to be called the global tapestry. And we're basically looking at all these different civilizations during 1200 to 1450 and how they brought people together and how they experienced a golden age or a not golden age. We're going to talk about China today, and then we're going to kind of go westward from there and build comparisons about how these places built their societies. We're going to talk about Southeast Asia. We're going to talk about the Middle East. We're going to talk about African civilizations in West Africa and East Africa. We're going to talk about Europe, and we're going to talk about the Americas. Today, we're going to start our global tapestry unit by zooming in on China during its period called the Song Dynasty in the 1200s and 1300s. And I want to talk about why that's important, why it's important to learn about the Song Dynasty. Okay. The reason it's important is because you are becoming leaders in the world. That is what we're doing in this school. You are becoming growing leaders. And in order to be a leader in the world today, you need to know about China. China is on the rise as we speak. It is becoming the number one economy in the world. Some people are writing books about how America is bowing down to China and letting China become the leader of the world. Okay, so in order to live in this world and lead in this world, which is what you are destined to do, you have to understand China today and how China operates and how China became the way it is today. And so we're going to look at this period during the Song Dynasty when Asia, and particularly China, was the center of the world. Our aim is that you will be able to make arguments about changes and continuities in China from the classical period to the post-classical by completing a textbook tour to organize key information on Song Dynasty China. Okay, we're really going to tell this story of how China became number one. And the way our class is going to work, you already reviewed from last year, and I opened with this idea that you have to know about China to be a leader in the world. I'm going to model how I want you to do the textbook tour. You're going to do the second and third part of the textbook tour independently. I'm going to guide you on how to write a short answer question, and then you're going to complete the exit ticket with short answer questions part B and C. So let's get started. Before we get started, I want to use some pictures to remind you of where we're going. Okay, last year you learned about topics like the Mandate of Heaven, the Chinese first emperor, Emperor Qin, the guy China's named after, Qin. You learned about Confucius and the way that he wanted to organize society based on harmony and relationships. You learned about the spread of Buddhism to China after the fall of the Han Dynasty. And you probably learned about Chinese economy because it's the birthplace of silk. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use those reminders to go into a textbook about Chinese history and how it changed and stayed the same over time. The next slide has a Google Doc of questions for your textbook tour. And the slide after that has a Google Doc of the textbook itself. I'm going to ask you to make a copy of both of those documents and then set up your screen like this so that we can read on the left side and write on the right side.